source information. And I see the recording is progress. Good deal. Thank you, Ed. So one more for the record. Our workshop is conducting a literature review in engineering, health, and science disciplines. I'm Carrie Leatherman with Dianna Sachs, Ed Eckel. Let me go ahead and share my screen so you can see the slide deck that I have for you guys. Okay, can everybody see that?
Not yet.
Oh dear, okay. Let me know when that pops up. Let me see here. Let me go out of this. Sorry, let me try that one more time. Okay. Should see that now. Can you see that now, guys?
Yep.
Oh, excellent. All right. All right. Hi. So let's go ahead and advance to the next slide. So this is an outline of what we're going to be covering today. We're going to be covering the basics. We will cover what is an actual literature review, how you actually go about defining the question and scope of your literature review, where to conduct your search, where to actually look for the literature in your literature review. We're going to go into some details about specific search techniques and also talk about how to keep track of your searches. Oddly enough, that's a pretty important part of the lit review. We'll also talk about how to determine if the literature you're finding is actually relevant to your particular research topic and your literature review. Also, we'll look into how to determine when you're actually finished with your lit review. When is your lit review complete? That can, oddly enough, be a very challenging aspect of a lit review. One thing that's not here on the slide I should mention, though, is that we're also going to be getting feedback from you all. We'll be giving you a link to a very, very brief online survey at the end of this workshop. We'd appreciate it if you would go ahead and fill it out when the time comes. It helps us figure out if these workshops are actually providing you with the information you need, if they're meeting your needs. And it's a really important part of what we do. We want to make sure that this stuff is relevant for you guys. So when the time comes, please consider filling it out. Okay, next slide. Okay, so what is a literature review? We have a definition up here on the slide, and I'll just really briefly read it. A literature review is both a process and a product. What you're doing is searching article databases for current and relevant literature written about a particular research topic. As a product, though, a literature review is a final product. Literally, it's a written synthesis of what is currently known about a research topic, and it gives you supporting evidence for the thesis of whatever research project you're doing. Throughout most of this workshop, we're going to be assuming that the lit review you guys are doing is a pretty large scale one, something like a lit review for a master's thesis or a doctoral dissertation. A lot of what we talk about can be applied to smaller scale literature reviews, maybe something that you're doing for like a semester term paper. Just to keep that in mind, though, we're really assuming that larger scale project that you're working on. A couple other points about what a literature review is. Aside from just this definition, you want your literature review to be comprehensive, okay, for these large scale projects. You want to make sure that you are finding all the scholarly literature about your research question, really all. We want to make sure that you guys are able to situate your research, the research question you're trying to answer, within the context of all the literature out there on a particular topic or research question. The last thing you want to do when you're doing your research project is all of a sudden find out that the question you're trying to research has already been answered in the literature. That's painful. We don't want that. So we want to make sure you find everything out there. But beyond that too, beyond the practicality of that, again, the sort of research you would do for a thesis or dissertation, you're trying to do original research, and you want to make sure that that research is somehow building upon or answering an unanswered question in the literature. You need to know what's already been done so you can situate it within the scholarly conversation about that particular topic or question. Okay, So comprehensive is the key idea here. All right, next slide. Okay, so defining your research question. Couple of things you need to think about when defining a question is what sort of research are you actually going to be doing? What is your particular methodology for your research? And the sort of literature that you want to find should be pretty much related to that type of research that you're engaging in. You know, think about if your research is going to be qualitative versus quantitative. Think about things that relate to the research question you're going to be investigating. For example, in the health sciences, you probably will be thinking about a study population. Is it going to be males, females, teenagers, elderly? Perhaps for the biological sciences, you're going to be thinking about a particular organism. You know, what specific organism? Is it a species? Is it a genus? What have you? In the engineering and applied sciences, you might be thinking about specific materials or components that you're going to be doing research about. So think about what your question is going to be about, and then understand how that's going to be something that's going to be related in the literature that you're actually trying to find. Okay, so go ahead and define those things before searching. A related issue is defining the scope of the research you need to do. Are there certain parameters that you need to think about when looking for the literature? Is there a particular date range of literature that you need? Do you need stuff that's very current, perhaps in the last 5 years? Are you trying to do more historic research? What's related subject areas do you need to include in the research question and therefore the literature that you're finding? Is there inclusion-exclusion criteria? What type of documents are you looking for? Are you looking specifically for research articles, perhaps empirical research articles, primary literature and sciences? Are you looking for monographs, books on a topic, other dissertations and theses, technical reports, patents, systematic reviews in the health sciences? So have an idea what specific types of materials you need before you actually start searching for them. Okay, so that's kind of a general overview of literature reviews and how to go about setting up what your literature review is going to be about. I'm going to turn this over to Dianna now, and she is going to talk a little bit about an exercise to kind of help you start defining some of these parameters for your lit review. Take it away, Dianna.
Thank you. Let me just start sharing on my screen. How's that? Can you all see?
Yep.
All right. So I'm going to ask Ed, could you please pop the link to this into the chat? What we're going to ask you all to do now is our interactive portion of today's program. We are going to ask you all to click on this link, and it will take you to a Google spreadsheet. Looks like this. What you'll be doing is, sorry, I want to make sure it's share. Is this sharing the spreadsheet?
Let's see. I don't see it yet.
Okay, I think it might be sharing the wrong window. One moment.
Okay, yeah, I still see your slide.
Let's do it this way. How's that?
Got it.
Okay, so you will be able to go to this Google spreadsheet, and we're going to ask you to just complete the first 3 columns of this spreadsheet. Just go ahead and fill in the information for the 3 columns. So your name, that's the easy one, in column A. In column B, we'd like you to just define a research topic. Now, this can be a research topic that you're already working on. It could be a research topic that you think you might want to work on at some point in the future. It's totally up to you. But we'd like you to enter in a research topic of your choice. And then for that research topic, identify some scoping criteria that you might employ if conducting a literature review on that topic. So think about, are you looking for information from a particular date range? Are you looking for information that would fit under a particular methodology or a disciplinary approach? Are you looking specifically for journal articles, or do you want systematic reviews, or do you need, or are you open to things like books or other monographs? It's totally up to you, again, what your research topic is and what your scope criteria are, but we would like you to identify some research topic that you're interested in and some scope criteria that could go along with that research topic. So we'll just give you about 2 minutes or so, not very long, just brainstorm. And remember, this is not graded, so there's no right or wrong answer. It's just about you taking this opportunity to practice.
I just reposted the link in there for the 2 people who just arrived.
The link is in the chat, and that will take you to this Google spreadsheet, and you can fill out just the first 3 columns. Again, no right or wrong answer, just a research topic of your choice and some criteria that you would use to narrow in on that topic. Could it be information from a particular date, a particular methodology, a particular disciplinary approach, type of information that you would be needing, whatever would be appropriate for your needs.
Looks like we have a bunch of engineering people,
Yes.
computer science people.
Diana, could I add something too? Sorry, don't want to jump in there. Kind of playing upon that idea that this isn't graded. Please don't feel like you guys are held to this. This doesn't have to be a done deal. By all means, you can do your thesis or dissertation on something really different than what you're putting into this spreadsheet. It's kind of a brainstorming exercise. So don't feel kind of stuck. Kind of just let your imagination wander. Just give a shot at something. It's really just trying it out at this point. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Diana.
Oh, looks like somebody can't edit a document. Okay, I'm going to add that in there for you, Diana. So 1 second.
Okay.
Let
me double check share settings.
Topic.
Well, it does say that anyone can edit. It's possible if they're not able to access Google Docs at all, that would be a problem.
Yeah, it's the device that she's on, she said. So I'm just going to add it in there.
No problem.
Yep.
You all can continue working on this. We are going to come back to the same spreadsheet a few more times. We will, by the end of this workshop, you will have filled in all of the columns, but we're going to do those a little bit at a time. We're just doing the first 3 right now. So I'm going to go back to our presentation and we'll move on to the next section of the presentation. And this is where Carrie has already talked to you about how to define your research question and what kinds of things to think about when we think about the scope of the information that we'll need. But the next step is figuring out where do we even go to search to find the information that we need. Now, most academic and scholarly research, the kind of information that you need for literature review in the sciences is only available through subscriptions to journals that publish the research. That's just the way it works in academic publishing and in the sciences for the most part. You need a subscription to access the journals. Now, WMU Library subscribes to many, many hundreds of databases that collect all of these journals together so that you can search them. You can search by topic, you can search by researcher, any number of different ways. And there are some databases of journal articles that don't require a subscription at all. But as of right now, the majority of them do. Then this means that in order to do a comprehensive literature review, that meaning that you are gathering all of the relevant information on a topic like you would need to do for a major project such as a thesis or dissertation, then you will need to use these databases that require a subscription rather than rely only on those resources which are freely available and open access, like you can access from a general Google search. Now, there are two main types of databases. There's the discipline-specific databases that are focused on a particular academic discipline, and the interdisciplinary databases. And there are advantages to each, and most literature reviews will involve searching a combination of both discipline-specific and interdisciplinary databases. Discipline-specific databases tend to be much more, because they are more focused on a particular discipline, the indexing and structure behind the way that information is organized tends to allow you to dig very deep into the very narrow specific aspects of that particular discipline, and really contains many of the most relevant journals for that particular discipline. However, interdisciplinary databases have their own advantage as well, in that they give you interdisciplinary coverage. So it's very common that a research topic that you will be covering in your department may have some applicability in other departments as well, in other disciplines. And therefore, it's important for a comprehensive literature review for you to be able to identify and use research from other related academic disciplines. So, for example, if you were conducting research on the COVID-19 pandemic that we're all in the middle of right now, and you were doing that for a public health program, you would certainly want to be searching the discipline-specific databases that would be relevant to public health. But if you are if you're interested in how the public health restrictions could be put into place in a elementary school setting, you might also want to look in the interdisciplinary databases to see what has been discussed by researchers in an education program. That's just one example, but it's very rare that a topic is only relevant in one small area, one small discipline. So by searching a combination of the discipline-specific databases and the interdisciplinary databases, it allows you the opportunity to find some of those that other research that might be conducted in related disciplines that you might not find just in your own area. So here's just a few examples of some discipline-specific databases that some of you may have heard of, like Engineering Village or PsycInfo, a major psychology database. PubMed is probably one of the largest biomedical databases. SciFinder Scholar for the natural sciences. Some of the interdisciplinary databases that you might encounter would be Scopus, ProQuest, also the general library search. The main search button or the search bar on the WMU Library's website searches across many, many different databases across disciplines. Similarly to Google Scholar. If you use Google Scholar, that searches across many different academic disciplines. And just as an aside, even though the majority of academic research does require a subscription to access it, you can still use Google Scholar to search for information. And if you connect your Google Scholar account to your WMU Library's account, then anything that WMU Library subscribes to, you can access through Google Scholar. And we actually have a workshop on Google Scholar that we offer a few times a semester as well. So if anybody would like to learn more about how to use Google Scholar effectively for academic research, we certainly encourage you to attend that workshop. So the next thing that we'd like you to do is we're going to go back to our activity. And there is another link on this page, which is just going to take you to the library's main website, wmh.edu/library. Now, on that main page, if you click the link that says Find Databases, that will take you to a page. Let me see if I can pull this up. If you're on the library's main page and you click Find Databases, that will take you to a list of all of the different databases that we have. And you'll see that there is a pull-down menu at the top that says All Subjects. You can change that from all subjects to your discipline. So for example, if I go to chemistry, this takes me to the list of databases most commonly used in chemistry. Now, this is not necessarily the interdisciplinary databases, because these are primarily the databases which are used in chemistry. But what we would like you to do is go to this page and select databases that would be appropriate for the research topic that you have already identified. And then we'll go back to your worksheet, and we'd like you to fill in columns D, E, and F with 3 different databases that you identify that you think might be relevant for your research topic. And Ed put the direct link to the list of databases into chat. So just go right ahead and select 3 databases. Remember that the descriptions for each database are listed underneath each one, so you can choose ones that are appropriate to you. Again, for example, if I change the subject to, say, health and medicine, these are the databases that are most commonly associated with research in health and medicine. So you can see the list of databases for your discipline or other disciplines that might be relevant for your topic. Choose 3 and stick them in the worksheet. And we'll just take about 3 minutes to do that. Just take one more minute. Or 30 seconds, really. All right, so let me come back to our slides. Again, just like before, this is not a grid activity. It's just about you all having the opportunity to practice identifying different databases that could potentially be useful for you in the future. So the next thing to talk about is, now we've figured out our research question, we've figured out the scope criteria for our literature review, and we've identified 3 different places that we could be searching for information. Now we need to figure out what we're actually going to search for. And that sounds really simple, and sometimes it is really simple. But since the purpose of a literature review is to be comprehensive, that means that you often have to think creatively about what terms you're going to search for in order to be certain that you aren't missing some important and relevant information. So think about search terms and keywords like you would a hashtag on social media. If you search for a hashtag, but the author of a post has given the post a different hashtag, it's not going to come up in your search. So it's important to figure out what is the most common terminology used to describe your topic, and even some of the less common terminology used to describe your topic. Now, one of the simplest ways is to start with information that you already have. This could be your textbook or an article that you've already read that describes some part of your topic. And look for the words that the author is using to describe different aspects of that topic. You can also look at specialized thesauruses for your discipline. For example, PubMed, the major database for biomedical research, has what they call mesh terms, or medical subject heading terms. And these are specific terms that every article in the PubMed database is connected with. So, for example, if you're searching for information on heart attacks, PubMed will apply the medical subject heading of myocardial infarction to those articles, because that's the technical term. So when you're searching for information, you can use the search terms heart attack, and you can also use the term myocardial infarction. And you can also use umbrella terms or keywords that describe the broader concept, like cardiology. Or maybe you're going to use terms that are even more narrow, more specific, or related just to an aspect of your topic. Like you might do a search for cardiomyopathy or atherosclerosis. And you can even do some basic web searching or Google Scholar or even Wikipedia searching, just to find out what are the different terms, keywords, search ideas that are being used to help you generate a wide variety of possible search terms so that you can try them all and make sure that you're not missing out on any important information. Now, I will stress from personal experience, it's very, very important to keep a list of your search terms. It's much, much easier to feel confident that you have completed a comprehensive literature search if you are keeping track of what terms you searched for in each database. Now, another thing to point out real quick is that journal articles often have a list of what they call author-supplied keywords. So here, there we go. Here on this slide, you'll see in the red box on the bottom left there, this is an example of how many academic journals will include keywords. And these will often also be listed in the database record as well as on the pages of some of the articles themselves. And sometimes they might be referred to as subjects. They might be referred to as major subjects or minor subjects. They might be referred to as descriptors. Often they're called keywords. So if you look at the keywords in this particular image, in this particular article, you'll see that the keywords include things like hybrid metal matrix and aluminum oxide and universal testing machine. Now, all of those are terms that you could add to your list of potential search terms. If you found this article and you're like, that article is related to my topic, you write down those search terms, those keywords, and you can use them to find other articles that may also be relevant to your topic. And it's particularly important to note, though, that the keywords listed here have been supplied by the authors. This is how the authors are describing their own work. And they usually reflect the standard terminology of the field. Now, the databases will often also list keywords that are selected by journal editors or even the database editors. A lot of that depends on the individual database, the individual journal that you may be searching. But look for keywords or subjects or descriptors, whatever term is being used, because those can be opportunities for you to identify other ways of describing aspects of your topic that you may not have thought of. Add that to your list of possible search terms, and then you'll have a wonderfully comprehensive list to work with. So now we're going to go back to our worksheet. And again, in going back to our worksheet here, we're going to ask you all to identify 4 or 5 terms, keyword terms that you could potentially use to search for information on your topic. Now, again, it could be very straightforward, like it could be the broad topic, like the broad topic might be children. Or it could be a narrower topic, like it could be elementary school, if you're dealing specifically with students in elementary school. Or it could be, you could be picking a topic like heart attacks, and you want the synonym of myocardial infarction. You've got the broader topic of cardiology. You've got the smaller, narrower topics of atherosclerosis, or a particular kind of stent, for example. There's all different ways for you to think about your topic. So we're just asking you to brainstorm. No right or wrong answer, but brainstorm 4 or 5 different terms that you could potentially use for your research topic. So go ahead and do that. It'll take about 3 minutes to do that. And this is just column G. looks like we're getting there. You can, of course, continue filling in this information. And if you're having trouble accessing the spreadsheet, don't worry about it. If you want to send us your information in chat, we can put it in for you. Or even if you just want to do it on your own, that's fine too. This is all about practice. This is not for a grade. I will point out that particularly in the engineering disciplines, although really this can happen in all of the sciences, there are often a lot of abbreviations that can be used in these different topics. So it's frequently helpful to search both for the abbreviation and also for the full term, to write out the full word. Because depending on, again, it all depends on what is the phrasing that the author and the journal chose to use. So if there are multiple ways of describing an idea, especially if there's an abbreviation, we always recommend putting in multiple, we're trying to do a search with the abbreviation and then also try the search with the full term written out. So I'm going to pass things off to Ed now, and he's going to talk a bit more about some more sophisticated options for searching.
All right, so at this point, hopefully you can see my share screen. Oh, this is Ed. So I'm going to talk about the next stage. So you've identified some databases, you've identified some keywords, you have a sense of what you're searching for. So now the next step is to talk about search techniques once you get into a database. So on the overhead, I've got some suggestions for tools that you're going to be using when you're within a database that you want to be aware of. So the first thing is Boolean logic. Being able to link your keywords with and, or, and not, and I'll demonstrate that in 1 second. Date limits. Remember at the beginning of the workshop, you were asked to kind of come up with a general range of time period that you want to cover in terms of finding your sources, how far back you want to go. Most databases will give you an option or multiple options for limiting and filtering by date for the documents, the articles and books that you retrieve. Also, keep in mind phrases. So let me get my little annotation thing here. Okay, so if you have phrases which are 2 or more words that always go together, so that the 2 or more words together indicate a concept like cell signaling or advanced oxidation, you want to put quotation marks around those phrases because that tells the database, whether it's Google or Engineering Village or PsycInfo, that you want to search for these phrases as units, as the concept itself, as opposed to separate words like advanced and oxidation. Okay, so let me show you kind of how this is going to look in a database. So let me pull up a particular database here and turn off my annotation for a second. So the database that I have on the overhead right now is PsycInfo. It's the discipline-specific databases we mentioned earlier. So in PsycInfo, you're going to have search boxes, right? And the search boxes are going to be linked with either and or not. You're going to see this kind of drop down in almost every database. Basically, what and does is it tells the database, I want any of these terms in the first box to show up in the article, and I also want this term. So I basically want to link my first concept, in this example, mindfulness, meditation, or awareness, with the second concept, adolescent parents. Notice that I put adolescent parents in quotation marks. So I'm basically looking for the intersection of these terms. If I were to change this to or, then basically it tells the database I want anything that deals with the concepts up here, or I just want everything that has to do with the second concept, which is adolescent parents. If you did this, you'd get a really long list of results, a lot of which would be irrelevant, and they wouldn't necessarily be linking both of your concepts. Now, if you want something to not show up in your results, that's where you use not. So if I'm interested in mindfulness meditation, but I don't want stuff dealing with adolescent parents, then I can change this to not. Okay. Now, date limits in PsycInfo, it has a date function filter that you can use. to specify what date range of sources you want to search for. That's PsycInfo. You're going to find the same thing in other databases such as Scopus. Again, Scopus, I added an extra search box using the little plus, so I have 2 search boxes. And again, and, or, and they call not and not. Okay, so again, the term in the first box, if I have and, it's going to search for that term and the second term in any of the articles that are in this database. And if I click on the limit, that's going to give me the option of limiting by date. Okay, and don't forget those quotation marks as well around phrases. Now, the other thing you need to do, Dianna emphasized, either Dianna or Carrie, the keeping track of your keywords. Okay, so what you might want to do is keep track of all of your research in some type of log. So keep an eye on what databases that you've searched. Okay, because if you're going to do a really comprehensive search, you want to make sure that you've searched all the relevant databases. You want to keep track of the keywords that you've used. You want to keep track of any limits or filters that you've used. So what date ranges have you searched? If you've searched the last 10 years and you go talk to your professor or your advisor says, I think you should go back 15 years. You can look at your research log and know, okay, I've only looked at the last 10 years. I'm going to go back and change my search and look for the stuff going 15 years back. Now, the other thing is keeping track of the references that you find. Now, you can copy and paste things from databases. Databases often allow you to email the results to yourself. What you may want to do to keep track of your references is to export the files, either as an Excel spreadsheet, a CSV file, which can be used in Excel or in Mac numbers, or in something called an RIS file, which is a file format for citation management software. If you are doing a dissertation or a master's thesis, you really should look into learning how to use a bibliographic software. Now at the library here, we provide training in 2 free softwares. One is called Mendeley and one is called Zotero. Both Mendeley and Zotero work with Microsoft Word documents. PaperPile is for people who use Google Docs. That costs, I think, about $2 or $3 a month, but it's a really excellent citation management software to use with Google Docs. EndNote is probably the Cadillac of bibliographic citation software, and it also costs a fair bit, something like $120 or $130 for students and $300 for people not affiliated with the university. So you'll want to follow up and try to find out more about these and learn how to use them. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is determining relevance. So you're going to generate lists of results. Remember, at the beginning of the session, we talked about figuring out the scope of your research. What types of material should be included and excluded from your search results, okay? So think about looking at the stuff that you get in your database list searches. Figure out what needs to be included, what you should read and what you shouldn't read. Look at the methodologies. Are the methodology of the materials that you find relevant to your project and useful? What about the research results? Do the research results have anything to do with your project? Do they support your project? Do they disagree with your focus? Do they provide some kind of useful background information? Look at journal ranking. Are the journals that the information that you found that's published in, are those journals high ranking? If so, then there's probably more important than some of the lower ranking journals. And if you talk to your librarian, we can show you about how to determine where something ranks. One of the things you can do as you're searching, besides using databases and search engines, is finding key papers, or what we called earlier seed papers, and then finding out who cited those papers. So famous papers, for example, the Watson-Crick paper from 1953 on the genetic code. Finding a famous or a key paper in your research, and then looking at the references they cited and look at who cites that reference. Look for information, papers by well-known researchers in your area. Most databases will enable you to identify who is published the most on your topic. And then you could follow up and look at those people's work more closely. Look at the reference list of the papers that you find. So for example, here is a paper, a psychology paper, all right? Information overload. Go to the reference list at the back and try to identify papers from the reference list that you did not see in your database search. And as I mentioned a couple moments ago, find out who cited the papers that you found. So using the Scopus database and Google Scholar in particular, you can find what papers have come after the papers that you found that would be useful for you to use for your research. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have you do some searching practice. So what we would like you to do is go back to your database lists, pick one of the databases that you selected, and try a search in that database. Try out the and, or, and not options if they're available in that database. Put some of your keywords in the database. Try to find a relevant paper, what we call here a seed paper, and post the title of that paper in the worksheet. See if you can access the full text of that paper. So in the worksheet, your seed paper reference is column H, all right? And for those of you who can't access the worksheet, just go ahead and post your information in the chat, and we will post it into the worksheet. Okay, so we're going to give you, we got about 9 minutes left. We have the survey to do. So we'll give you about maybe 5 minutes to work on this. And if you have questions, feel free to post them in the chat box. And you'll probably notice that Dianna posted in the chat links to my 2 Mendeley and Zotero guides and information about PaperPile and EndNote, and recordings of a previous workshop on Mendeley and a previous workshop on Zotero.
And if anybody would be interested in joining us for a live workshop, I believe there is a live workshop on Mendeley next week, and in a few more in December. Is that right, for both Mendeley and Zotero?
Yeah, the Mendeley workshop is not next week, but I have 2 each month. So there will be 2 in November and 2 in December. One for Mendeley, one for Zotero. Yep. But I don't see one for next week in the, yes, they're coming up though. All right, looks like one person's already posted an article, so I'm going to put that in here. Yep, okay, somebody already got it. All right, got that. take about 2 more minutes. And don't worry too much about whether you found anything quickly. It's not very reasonable to ask people to find a really good seed paper in 5 minutes.
It's just an opportunity to practice.
Exactly. And I've got one more slide to share with you before we open it up for questions and the survey.
If you're having trouble copying, you maybe just copy it into the notes column, and then you can just take that one cell. That might be easier.
All right, maybe 1 more minute.
I think everybody's got something. We just had a little bit of overlay copying issues, but
Okay.
everybody's had the opportunity to practice. That's the important part.
Okay, let me do the last slide real quick. So the other thing that you have to figure out, especially when you have a really comprehensive project such as a dissertation or a master's thesis, is when you're actually done finding all the resources that you need to find. And it's kind of like, you know, this existential kind of question, am I really done or not? So a couple things you can do to help yourself kind of figure this out is, first of all, think about how many databases you searched. So have you indeed gotten all the keywords that relate to your topic? That's the first question. Have you identified all the terms that researchers are using for your topic area? Have you searched all of the relevant databases? You know, and this is where you might want to have the help of a librarian to figure out where your research and your literature would be covered. If you start seeing the same references show up again and again as you're searching database after database, that's kind of the law of diminishing returns. It looks like you're probably at that point, you can probably conclude that you've identified all of the main research that you need to access for your project. What you can do is, if you're doing a search in September, but you're not going to be writing your literature review till March, you might want to set up citation alerts in the databases. Most databases allow you to set up an alert for your topic for the keywords that you're searching, so that you get any results that have been added since you last searched that database through email or through an RSS feed. That way, anything that comes up after you've done your database search, you will get an alert on, so you know to go back and find that literature to be able to incorporate it into your notes and into your literature review for your document. Okay? So now what I'm going to do, if you need help, the 3 of us are the main science librarians at Western. So feel free to copy our name and our email address and contact us. You are welcome to schedule an online consultation with us in Zoom or WebEx or Teams to get help. And I'll leave this up for 1 moment. And Dianna just posted in the chat box the survey link. In fact, I'll go ahead and move to that page here. So here's also a link to that survey. We like to get feedback on these workshops to improve them. So please let us know what you think. Okay? And also, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask.
If you can unmute yourself if you've got questions, or you can just pop a question into chat, whatever way is easier for you.
I have questions Dr. Ed. Can you hear me? Hello.
Um, Whomever was asking their question, we were just getting some feedback. Everybody who's not speaking, why don't you go ahead and mute your mic, and we'll have that one person go ahead and ask their question again. Or you can put it in the chat, whatever works for you. Well, I'm afraid we scared you off. Well, if anybody has any questions, please go ahead and ask them, put them in the chat. There we go. Oh, okay. Okay, so it looks like somebody's asking, I started using the Engineering Village, but did not find it encouraging, so I was back to Google. Okay. Oh, Ed, you're muted.
Yeah, I am happy to help you use Engineering Village. It really is very powerful. So if you're going to do a master's thesis or a dissertation, you're definitely going to want to use that. So let me post in the email into the chat box the tutorial I have set up for using Engineering Village. And you will want to contact me, okay? And I can show you how to use Engineering Village because it really is extremely powerful. So one moment here, let me post the tutorial link.
I'll just jump on that a little bit. Every database is a little bit different, and there are techniques for getting the most out of each database. So if you remember nothing else from this workshop, remember that we're here. It's literally our job to help you. And it's totally normal to not necessarily know how to use something if you've never used it before. So if you're having trouble with a particular database, please feel free to reach out to us either by email or phone or make an appointment for a consultation, and we can help you with the specific specialized techniques for the databases that you need to use, because they really are different depending on which database you're using, and that's what we're here for.
I'll just jump on that too. It really isn't an imposition. It's our job. It is our job. This is what we do. We are delighted to do it. And nobody's, like you said, Dianna, nobody's more knowing this stuff. That's the whole point of having librarians, the whole point of having course instructors. You know, when you enroll in WMU, they just don't, give you a pile of textbooks and say good luck. I mean, really, instructors, librarians, it's the whole point. So please, please, any questions, let us know. It's why we're here.
I did put a couple of more links in the chat for both recordings of past library research workshops as well as some upcoming library research workshops. So we hope to see you at some of the others, or again, you can review the recordings at your leisure. Any other questions for right now?